wouldn't have been able to take on all the endeavors that we were able to without NBT. The Abbey Group is a food service management company servicing New England and New York. We specialize in K-12 schools.
We currently serve over 50,000 meals a day, and we're really big on bringing our local food into the cafeterias.
I began working with the Abbey Group when they were struggling with their former bank to understand their business model. I was able to meet with the owners and their accountant and understand their structure better, which enabled us to meet their needs and help them grow.
During the pandemic, our whole country shut down. Businesses shut down, schools.
We had to completely pivot our business on a dime. It was still imperative that the students were fed.
I think the Abbey Group was able just to pivot and move in the direction they had to because we had NBT Bank there immediately for us.
We had the opportunity to bid and we won Farmers to Families Food Box program that was sponsored by the USDA. We were able to pack boxes and have them delivered directly into people's cars.
And so it was our good relationship we had and understanding with the business that we were able to easily and quickly respond to their needs so that they could take advantage of these contracts and win the contract.
We grew in the pandemic from feeding children in the cafeteria to feeding their whole families in their homes and to helping the whole state of Vermont during, with their food insecurities.
Everyone benefited, the employees, the families, the local companies, the local farmers. This all came together in a wonderful circle of helping each other. And you can only do that when you have a bank like NBT.
It's great when a customer calls us up and tells us about a great win that they've been working on for a long time and we help them achieve that goal.
They're personable, their employees at NBT are amazing. They care, and that's what it's all about when you want to grow your business.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 21st Century Business Forum. I'm your host, Clay Young. Now, this morning, we are thrilled to have with us one of America's trailblazing celebrity chefs, Emeril Lagasse. Over the past 31 years, Chef has opened 21 restaurants across the U.S. and is currently the chef proprietor of 11 restaurants in New Orleans, Las Vegas, Miramar Beach, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and aboard Carnival Cruise Line's Mardi Gras ship. Both he and his restaurants have won numerous accolades over the years. He has hosted more than 2,000 shows on the Food Network and has appeared on numerous other programs and series. He is also a best-selling author of 19 cookbooks. Amazing. He also sells a wide range of branded merchandise. And he's nationally recognized for his philanthropic work through the Emeril Lagasse Foundation, which has distributed millions to children's charities nationwide. I would be remiss in not mentioning that he is also widely known for his catchphrases, including BAM! And kick it up a notch. Chef, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We're looking forward to this conversation. Well, Chef, we mentioned that you're a trailblazer in terms of chefs becoming a brand, and before Ramsay and Flay and Oliver, you were someone that was kind of taking the country by storm. Even in the early days when Food Network started in the 90s, not long after you got going, you kind of got out on your own and became so big, first starting here in Louisiana, down in New Orleans, and then now what you're doing. When you started, did you believe you were going to be this big, and what made you strategically pursue this path?
Well, I basically look at life every day that I'm a chef and I'm a restaurateur. When I opened Emeril's in 1990, and soon after that, I got a call from a production company out of Nashville. And they basically said, look, we're starting up this network, and we're just producing a few shows for them. It's going to be a food network, and it's going to be 24 hours about food and wine. I had just opened NOLA, so this was about maybe a year and a half, 2 years after I opened Emeril's, which, by the way, the reason why I opened NOLA was because I didn't want to have a revolving door, so I needed to create opportunities for people that wanted to stay on board. Getting back to the Food Network, I went to Nashville. I did a pilot. I didn't really even know what a pilot was. They liked the pilot. They wanted me to shoot a show. Was completely wrong. I knew that from the start. It was called How to Boil Water, but I did it because it was a chance for me, after so many years being in the industry, to go back and do basic things and make sure that basic things were being done right. Whether it was spreading butter on bread or making a sandwich. I did that, and then the then president of the Food Network, who really started it all, called me and said, look, I got good news and I got bad news. And I was very busy at Emerils and had some good people at NOLA, but my focus and concentration was really the restaurants. Never really thought I would do television full time. And he said, well, you're a really good chef and you should really consider doing more TV, but you're a lousy television host, so you're really fired from How to Boil Water. My first reaction was, thank God, because I really didn't want to do this show, although I did it. I did another show. It was not right. Maybe a show after that. And then finally, he called me to New York and his team, and I went to New York and visited, and he said, look, you really should do television because you're a really good cook and you could teach people, if you're taught the right way, how to teach people how to cook. So he said, what would you like to do? And so after 48 hours or so of kicking things back and forth with his team and myself, it was evident that we should create a show called Essence of Emeril, just that. So I did a lot of seasons, almost, I guess, 11 seasons of Essence of Emeril, close to 12 seasons. And about the second or third season, I was walking down the street in New York with my agent then, his name is Shep Gordon. And Shep and I were walking down, and all of a sudden I've got people like yelling out the window and cab drivers honking horns and bam, and, you know, just like going crazy. And Shep said, let me tell you something. He said, Chef, you might have made it. You might have done something. I think you might be making some impact here on this thing called television. So multiple years, multiple shows later, it started getting a little old at the end. To answer your question directly, it became apparent to me that people wanted more. People wanted more of Emeril. And how was I going to do that? So the first thing, really, beside cookbooks, I did my first cookbook at Emeril's, New Orleans Cooking, was really the stuff that I was using to spice or kick things up, called the Essence, or BAM. They wanted that. They wanted to bring those flavors home, but they couldn't get to them. So Shep and I started a little spice company, and it took off, and so that was really the beginning of it. But my focus always was the restaurants. I had put myself in a very tough schedule situation because of the restaurants. So we were closed on Sunday and Monday. So Saturday night after service, I'd go home, get a couple of hours sleep, jump on the first airplane Sunday morning, get off the airplane, shoot 4 shows Sunday afternoon, come in Monday, shoot 8 shows.
Wow.
And Tuesday morning, shoot 4 shows, and then head back to New Orleans and go right back into the restaurants.
When did you have time to cook or sleep?
Yeah, not much sleep. A lot of cooking, but not much sleep.
I want to ask a question based upon what you said a second ago, Chef, when you were walking in New York with your agent and people are recognizing you and reacting. So a couple things in there to unpack. That's the #1 media market in the world. So when the people in that town recognize you, it's special because they're so sophisticated as it relates to big brands and seeing celebrities. So what did that feel like? And what did you think about it when your agent was saying to you, Chef, I mean, you might have done something here, because clearly this was at the beginning. What'd you think about that?
Well, I thought, look, I have to really live up to expectations. because there's expectations not only in the restaurant, but there's expectations now as far as this host that's teaching people or trying to teach people how to cook. And my approach from the beginning was always never to intimidate people about cooking or about shopping or about wine or food and wine pairing, whatever. It was really to entice them to do it at home. At the time, home cooking was very stagnant, except for grandma and maybe Aunt Judy, and not so much in New Orleans, because in New Orleans, we cook all the time, and families cook all the time and share and eat, and friends and all the different celebrations that we have. So I wasn't basing it just on New Orleans. I was basing it on my experience from New Orleans and my experience about, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it right. I'm creating it, so it has to be right, because now this thing just started called the internet. And so things wanted to be put on the internet, so they had to be correct. And so as that began, the market base began to broaden, because they wanted more than just spice, and they wanted more than just cookbooks. They wanted something else. What's those pans that you're using? Why are they so special? And what's that spoon, that wooden spoon that you're using, and that towel you got thrown over your shoulder? And where can I get that? Because at the time, you couldn't just go down to Bed Bath & Beyond or Macy's or whatever and just get that stuff. So thoroughly, I thought about, okay, again, if I'm going to expand this and give people more of what they're asking for, then I have to do it right. So in conjunction with Shep, I also brought on another agent from the William Morris agency, and he was very, very experienced. He's been in the business for a long time. Not so much that he knew about creating or setting up a brand, but he had a lot of influence in America because of, how prominent he was. So the first thing basically that we discussed was, if we're going to do this with someone, we have to do it with the right people, and we have to do it with the best people. We have to be aligned with the best people, so that if somebody does go to the store or goes on the internet or comes to the restaurant or home base and buys a pan, a saute pan, it can't just fall apart like in 3 days or 3 weeks. It really has to be great product. And so that was the approach. I went and sought the best. I had All-Clad as my cookware maker at the time. I had Wusthof as my cutlery maker at the time, two of the very best in the world. But I was also very, very involved with creating that. It wasn't just putting, today, a lot of these guys and gals, without mentioning names, they're just putting their name on stuff that they don't even know what it feels like, what the weight is, how it's going to cook, how it's going to last. It's just about, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's ego, maybe it's money. I don't know. For me, I learned a long time ago when I worked for Ella Brennan at Commander's Palace that it's best to leave your ego at home if you want to be successful, and concentrate and focus on what you're doing and do it right. And that way people will understand that, particularly when you're on the presence of television. You can only fake people for so long. You can only be not real for so long before people say, who is this clown? Who's this joker? What is he trying to do? What's he trying to sell me this crap for? I'm not falling for this. And so I was true to my craft, always, as still am today. I'm in the kitchen every day today. I'm just had the pleasure about 5 months ago reopening Emeril's for the first time since the pandemic. It allowed me to, during the pandemic, to really think again about, what am I doing? What am I doing this for? And who am I doing this for? And why am I doing this? And so, I decided reopening Emeril's that I just turned it completely upside down. After 32 years, it's completely upside down. It's a complete different restaurant. It's refined. It's truly fine dining, more than what it was before. And it's because, I just realized that, maybe it's time that I go back to cooking for me. And if I'm happy with what I'm cooking, then I think my guests will be happy.
I love that. I love that answer. You know, when you were at Commander's Palace, you had to work hard to, break through the straitjacket of New Orleans cooking. When you hire chefs, the people who are all part of your team, is that something you expect from them? And how do you keep them on point?
Well, I don't ask them, first of all, to do anything that I wouldn't do. Number two, like I said, I'm still in the kitchen every day, whether it's at Emeril's, which I've been spending most of my time with now, whether it's reformulating Emeril's Coastal in Destin, Florida, whether it's reopening the steakhouse in Vegas. It's a very hands-on thing. Getting back to us, the question that you asked about chefs, I think the first thing that we try to do is we try to Emerilize them as much as possible. So we're not using customers as guinea pigs. We're not putting blueberry jam on lobster and crazy things and crazy combinations like that. It has to be real. It has to have soul. It has to have heart, and it has to be right. It has to be technically right as well. Example being, just before the pandemic, I went and hired one of the creative directors at Le Bernardin in New York, because I knew that my vision was I was going to refocus and re-energize Emeril's completely. And so I have really good people. I have David Slater. I have a great team. My son now is beginning to be in the industry as well. Long story short, David and I and the team just decided, look, we're going to invest in this creative director because this guy, that's what he does. We meet and he goes and creates and comes back and says, what do you think? And we critique and we fine tune and make tweaks before the customer even sees it. So this is a process that's happening at Emeril's in a very big way, but it's a process that happens in all the restaurants. The chefs know that we're not using our customers as guinea pigs, that they have to be true to their stance. Quality is everything. If you have quality ingredients, which I've worked hard at for 40 years here in New Orleans, then you can have great cuisine. It doesn't have to so much be expensive, although these days it's out of control.
Yeah.
But you can buy a fresh piece of local flounder that's just as good as a turbo that's coming from France. So it's just a way of then treating it, and then a way of technically how you're cooking it before you're serving it to the guest to make it and be sure that it's super delicious.
So let's talk a little bit about you as an executive and some of the ways that you go about leading your team. Obviously, you just said, as it relates to your chefs in the kitchen, you Emerilize them so they're not using your customers as guinea pigs that they know. But what about other members of this empire that you built? What is the process of getting them behind your vision and the mission of what Emeril's is?
Well, there are standards that have been set. There's some standards that are manualized, a lot of standards that are manualized, that there's no compromise. So, whether you're a busboy or a dishwasher, there's no compromising the level and quality of where we want to be. So that's number one. Number two, as I said earlier, I don't ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do. If I bend over and pick up a piece of paper that somebody dropped in the bathroom or by the front door, I expect you to be able to pick up the piece of paper as well. So the standards are there, but as we evolve and have evolved now 30 some years, there has to be change. There has to be things that you reformulate and things that you rethink, just because the marketplace is very different. As of like right now, help is a problem. Supplies are a problem. Pricing is a problem. But what does that equate to? Makes me feel very bad that I have to pass that along to my guest, who at one point was maybe paying $22 for something, but now is paying $32 for something, but I have no control. I'm trying to run a business and I'm trying to, now, the average cook that I have in the kitchen right now, average cook in the kitchen is making $18, $19 an hour. That's 40%, 30% more before the pandemic started. And you can't find them. So the demand is not there, but the demand for high wages, high standards, et cetera, is there. So, for me, it's like I go back to the drawing board every day. I get up every day. I try a little bit harder than the day before, and I'm not going to compromise. And what I'm going to do is think. I once spent, I did a show a few years ago called Eat the World with Emeril Lagasse on Amazon Prime, won 5 Emmy Awards. Wow, okay, great. Doesn't mean that I was going to get another season, right? No matter how good it is, it just made me realize that, no matter how good it is and no matter what the prize is, you got to keep getting better all the time. And so now I'm being pushed by my son, who is just graduated from culinary school, college, has been grown up in the business. He worked 2 summers at Le Bernardin, a summer at Danielle. As a matter of fact, today, of all days, talking with you, he's on his way to Europe, and he's moving to Europe for 3 months to work there. He's going to work in London first, then he's going to work in Portugal, and then he's going to work in France. But this is something that he's doing, not that I'm pushing him to do. But what he's pushing me to do is I got to get my shit together, because he's right behind me, pushing me all the way to the next base.
Yes, it's so funny you say that, because I think we're competitive, and you want to see your kids win, but at the same time, it's like, wait a minute, I'm not ready to get off this spot yet. So I got more in the tank.
And the way that they are today, as between the internet and all of this technical stuff, it's like, you and I are almost lost.
Right.
Some days, you know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
we're going to scratch our head and go, wait a minute here, what's going on?
Look, it's funny with my son, who's at LSU right now, chef, and we'll sit and talk about things that relate to marketing and social, and I'll sit across and he's explaining something to me about analytics and all these things, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, who's this person?
Exactly. A different world.
Chef, you were here obviously during Katrina, and you remember the impact it had on the restaurant industry, the city of New Orleans as a whole. And here we are now dealing with, as you referenced a second ago, the impact of this pandemic that it seems to be ever evolving. What is your strategy to preserve your company through what we're dealing with now?
Well, it's been very, very difficult. It was very difficult, first of all, after Katrina, both as a company and as a leader of the company, but as a person, personally. I ended up in New York and struggled for a while, personally and business-wise, that, wow, is this thing ever going to be able to get fixed? Because it's a mess. And I have people that are in 42 different zip codes around the country that, we're family and colleagues, and now how do we build this back? So a step at a time, we did it. I think New Orleans and Louisiana, for that matter, are very resilient. I think that we're very resilient people, and that I don't know if it's the humidity or what bounces off of our skin, but we're very resilient to helping each other and wanting to help each other united, whether it's about serving a meal or about getting a ride from somebody in a car. So I think together, many parts of the city, whether it's the Saints, the Pelicans, the administration, restaurateurs, chefs, business people, businesswomen, I think they came together and said, we're gonna fix this. We're gonna get this thing back. And then, of course, the luck of Louisiana, the luck of New Orleans. Then we have the pandemic. Then we have another hurricane. I mean, as you know, it's still a struggle. I mean, there are still streetlights that are not working.
That's right.
Here in the city, and the city's become a very, very challenging place once again. So, how do you combat that? You combat that by, for me at least, by educating people, my staff particularly, that being united is the only way that we're going to move forward. Okay. So if we can move forward and take a step, then maybe there's some people that will take a step behind us, or maybe they'll lead us and take a step before us. But we have to take steps in order to get this thing resolved.
Let me ask you about Emeril Home Base.
Yep.
I'm sorry, were you done with your
Oh,
answer?
that's okay. I was just going to say, as far as the pandemic, I don't really foresee anytime soon that this thing is going to go away. So I think what we have to do is understand that we have to live with this. So how do we do this together to live with this, to combat this, so that we can move forward, so that we can take a step?
Well, you're right, and it's been so interesting, and you've built this empire that has done so much and has been so successful, generating all of this money. And you've talked a lot about your team. How many employees, how many people do you have that are a part of this? And what are your key areas of business besides operating the 11 restaurants?
Well, they're not 11 anymore. First of all, at one point, there were close to 1,500 employees. We're a little under 600 right now.
Okay.
So we've lost some along the way with the pandemic. We've lost 3. But I think we're better operators today than we were because of understanding and taking the time to assess, to say, okay, here's the challenges that we're facing right now, the new challenges, but how are we going to stay in the game? And how are we going to get better at the game with these challenges that we're up against? And so home base is just a mechanism of support. It's not really a revenue producing area. It's just really a lot of money that's spent to give resources throughout the company, whether it's HR or whether it's technology or whether it's marketing or public relations or culinary. Things stem from home base. The interesting thing is that, I'll be truthful with you, it's probably been over 1.5 years since I've been in home base, because everybody has learned now how to operate differently. As I'm speaking with you today, I'm in my home, which is where I work mostly out of. I spend most of my time in the restaurants because my office has moved into the restaurants because I want to be with the people. And if the people know that I'm with them and support them, and we want to work on things every single day to get better. So I feel that's the way of life right now, that we have learned differently how to operate from a lot of different perspectives. Yes, you still need the telephone to call the fish purveyor, to call the produce market, et cetera, but those things haven't changed that much, although their ways of doing business have changed so much because of the pandemic. You can't get truck drivers, you can't get delivery people, you can't get fish cutters, you can't get, so it's made challenges to be able to look at things differently, almost in a sense to survive.
Would you say you've made any business decisions that you'd like to have back? And I'll tie right to that question, your thoughts on selling your franchise to Martha Stewart, Omni Media, and others.
Well, I don't have any regrets in life, but all you gather in life, the way that I look at it at least, is that you just keep gaining. Hopefully your mind is in that set, but you just keep gaining more and more experience and knowledge as you get older and as you move the compass in business. So, what I did 14 years ago, which is basically just the brand, and it's not the restaurants, it's not real estate, it's not the foundation, it's just really, it's the brand. So that's like cookware, but I'm not completely out of it. But, 14 years later, I would be looking at the business model much differently than I did 14 years ago. And I have people that I listen to today that I don't have or didn't have 14 years ago that maybe would have changed my mind, maybe would have given me a different strategy, a different plan. But I have no regrets. I did what I did because I can't really take that back. Well, I shouldn't say that because I could buy it back. But at this point in my game, I'm focusing and really challenging myself and my team in the restaurants. So still involved with those products, but it's not my focus. My focus is my restaurants and what I do with my foundation.
Before I get to advice, how do you challenge yourself? What's your way of getting Emeril going every day?
I read a lot. You know, Ella Brennan taught me a long time ago that it's best to be a great generalist than to be an expert in one particular subject. So I try to get good as many subjects as I possibly can, whether it's being and understanding the hospitality business or being a restaurateur or being a chef. I read a lot, just not cookbooks. And of course, it's a lot easier today with the internet and Instagram and all that stuff. It's easily, very quickly to get knowledge is very, very quick. So if you want to understand and know what the best Portuguese dish is, you can easily just get that pretty quickly, or the best Spanish dish or the best African dish. You can get that pretty quickly. And then from there, you can, understand a little bit more. Before 20, 30 years ago, even longer, I would tell people that, if you understand the culture, then you can understand the people. And if you understand the culture and the people, then you can understand the food. Mm-hmm. Today, you and I, just with the push of a button on our phone, we could take a quick plane ride just about anywhere that we want to go.
That's right.
So we can quickly more understand people and culture, and in my category, food, mm-hmm. because it's so fast. But I still believe that, if you want to understand the food in Paris, you should go to Paris.
Listen, I like that. So what's the, outside of reading and being someone who consumes knowledge through books, tell me some other advice, really good advice that someone, or that anyone's given you over your time. And did you follow it?
Well, family is very, very important. True friends, which that's another category, another subject, because really, truly, we can really, how many hands do you have, or how many fingers do you have? So, probably one of the best advice that I got from a pastry chef that I admired many, many, many years ago was he turned me on to, he's like, in order to be successful in this business, you have to be motivated. But motivation doesn't come just by saying, oh, I'm motivated today. You have to work at it. And so he turned me on to one of the greatest books I think that I've ever read. And it's called How to Think Big by Dr. David Schwartz. And it's a motivational book, but it really sort of changed the way of how I think. Because if you don't think big, maybe you're not going to be big. If you think small, it's probably what you're going to end up being, a small.
Chef Les Brown has a saying that it tickled me the first time I heard it, but he's so spot on. He says the problem with most people is that they don't aim too high and miss. They aim too low and hit.
Yeah.
And that's a thing, right?
You're right. I once had the pleasure, when I was doing that show, Eat the World, I had the pleasure of being in Spain with Jose Andres. But one of the days that we spent in Barcelona was with Ferran Adrian, who's considered probably the best chef in the world, or at one point was the best chef in the world. An amazing human being. And I went to his laboratory with Jose, and my Spanish is poor and his English was worse. But we were able, just because of the camaraderie of the kitchen, we were able to communicate extremely well. And I'll never forget what he said, which is something that I pass on to my young cooks particularly. And that is that, what? Sometimes we don't think enough. sometimes we just let repetition take over. Rather than thinking about how to make it better, or how to make it even tastier, or how to make it more efficient, or how to make it more cost efficient, we don't think enough. And we allow repetition to set in, which then creates mediocrity. And it was a really great lesson that I got from Ferron, because when I thought about it and analyzed it, and particularly in my business and my restaurants, it was just that. There's a repetition that comes, even though that we're in the people industry, because it changes every day, because I can't control how people act or react or how they think or what kind of mood they're going to be in. People are very interesting every day. It's a different element. So I go into my restaurant saying, okay, we have to look open-minded that today is a different element. It's not going to be like it was yesterday, because the humidity is different. So the bread's going to be different. The temperature is different. So the texture of the butter is going to be different. So the bread service is going to be different. And Johnny, you're not in a very good mood today. You're not very motivated because you fought with your wife or your girlfriend, which I can't control that either. So it's interesting to me that you go about it, that we're in this people industry, but how much can you and I really control?
Yeah, not much. Before we get out of here, because I could sit and talk to you for hours. Being philanthropic, I know, is important to you. I know it's a big part of who you are. And I remember in 2013, the James Beard Foundation named you Humanitarian of the Year. When did you decide you didn't just want to be a businessman? You didn't just want to run a business, but you also wanted to be actively involved in charity work?
Yeah. Well, as chefs, we're always asked for a lot of things. We're asked to do a lot of special dinners and donations and charity events, et cetera, to help people. So we've always done that along the road. It's just been the course since I've been at Commander's Palace. I had a really good mentor, and I'm not name dropping here, but I had a really good mentor that we became really good friends, and I became on his board for 10 years by the name of Emeril Lagasse. And Andre started a school in Las Vegas from scratch. And I watched him, and I watched how he made this whole thing happen with people, with gifts, with donations, but never losing focus of children and what that meant to him, being a Las Vegas resident, to build a school in Las Vegas for unprivileged, maybe children that not from a, not so good of a situation. And I learned that, and I watched Andre for 10, 12 years do this. And I finally said to my wife, Alden, I said, you know what? Maybe it's time that we do this in a big way. Instead of just like donating gumbo for 100 people down the street for so-and-so or whatever, maybe we need to do this for a big way. And I'm all about unprivileged children.
Yep.
And people coming from a not so good circumstance. And so it's been several years now. We've granted over $19 million, mostly in the city of New Orleans, greater part of Louisiana, the Gulf Coast, Las Vegas, the Panhandle. And we've built schools, we've helped military bases, we've built, the culinary program here at NOCA, we built that. Cafe Reconcile. I could go on and on. Liberty's Kitchen, I could go on and on. The feeling to see a child go into a garden and understand what an eggplant is, or understand that an orange doesn't come from a cotton, it comes from a tree. That's a big deal for me. And so I'm not only trying to financially help, but I'm also trying to help humanity. And I'm trying to help these children understand life a little bit more than maybe they won't. And I have one project here in New Orleans that I involve. It's in a very terrible neighborhood, okay? It's a school, I have a garden, but I involve the parents, or at least one parent. Because if they're supportive of what we're doing, and understanding what we're doing at that particular schoolyard, which is embracing and encountering a better experience in the lunch program at that school. If they understand it, then they're going to understand it, how they can make it better at home. Doesn't matter about how much money or how not much money you have. It's really about caring and about from here. And so that's kind of the big mission of what, you know, I'm trying to do. My wife and I are trying to do. And I have to tell you, mostly it's working. We've impacted a lot of children. We've impacted a lot of people. We have another school that we built in Orlando that's doing the same thing. Sort of my legacy project right now is building more of these schoolyards, these garden schoolyards, to just get children more involved and understand. Because if they understand that, then they understand a lot of other things. They understand math, they understand nutrition, they understand to try to read more, and it just makes it a better place.
Oh man, just wonderful. And you know, New Orleans, like so many cities around the country, it has gone through so much, and the resilience of not just New Orleans, but the state of Louisiana has been amazing. You know, I want to ask you a two-part question, Chef, and this is great. I'm curious about one, but absolutely fascinated about the other. So here we go. What is your favorite dish to consume, and what's your favorite dish to cook?
Yeah, both very hard questions for me. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. My philosophy is really being inspired by the season. So that dish could change in the winter versus the summer. That dish could change when crawfish season is happening or when snapper season is happening in the Gulf. There is nothing better than a simple home-cooked roast chicken.
Oh, okay. Now we're talking. Now, what about your favorite thing to cook? That's the one to have, or what do you enjoy making the most?
Well, that changes every day too, because you know I'm always dreaming and thinking about food.
Yeah.
So you know, when I finish with you, and probably will have about 30 minutes with my family, and then I head to the restaurant. The first thing is going to be like, okay, I'm going to taste the kitchen. How are we going to make it better? What are we working on for tonight? Is the jelly perfect for the crudo? Is the garnish perfect for the crudo? So it's a process.
Well, you know, I'm looking forward to at some point when I'm down in New Orleans, hopefully catching you at the restaurant and being able to pick this conversation up again. It's been amazing. You know, we've got C-suite executives and people trying to climb into various industries across the country watching this. So for someone who is aspiring to be the quote unquote Emeril of their industry or profession, what is a piece of advice that you would share with them?
Well, I think you have to have a mentor, at least one. I think that you have to be true to yourself. So, you know, don't do it half-ass. Whether you're going to be a carpenter or you're going to be a chef or you're going to be a lawyer, try to learn from the best. Try to really understand what you're doing and work hard at it every day to get better.
Chef, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, man. This has been great. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Absolutely. Great chatting with you and great seeing you guys.
I'd also like to thank all of you, our guests, for joining me this morning, and thank you to our sponsors for making this episode possible. Now join us next month when our guest will be advertising guru and millennial whisperer, Chris Tuff. See you then.